Welcome to this explainer. Today, I'm going to be your culinary detective, walking you through the exact science and chemistry that makes our absolute favorite baked goods perfectly fluffy. We're unpacking the fascinating microscopic world that's going on right inside your mixing bowl. All right, let's just dive right in with a tragic but honestly highly relatable kitchen fail that we're going to learn how to solve today. You know the drill. You followed the recipe to a T, preheated the oven, but your cookies still came out looking like dense little pancakes. Man, it's so frustrating, right? But it's actually the perfect opportunity to understand the underlying science of what's really happening. So here's our roadmap. We'll quickly cover the magic of the rise, the 3 types of leavening, the baking soda versus powder debate, the double action secret, a really crucial 1-to-3 substitution rule, and finally, how to troubleshoot your bakes. Okay, Section 1. The magic of the rise, or microscopic gas expansion. So here's a fundamental truth that genuinely surprises a lot of bakers. Leaveners do not actually create new air bubbles out of thin air. Instead, they generate carbon dioxide that simply inflates the tiny, 10 to 50 micrometer bubbles that you've already created by physically whipping and mixing your ingredients. Meaning, if you don't cream your butter and sugar properly, your chemical leaveners literally have nowhere to deposit their gas, and it just bubbles to the surface and disappears, kind of like the fizz in a flat soda. Now, this brings us to a fascinating process called disproportionation. Imagine the larger bubbles in your dough acting like really stretchy balloons, aggressively stealing carbon dioxide from the smaller ones. Because of surface tension, the internal pressure in those tiny bubbles is incredibly high, so the gas naturally wants to diffuse into the larger bubbles where the pressure is lower. It's this uneven expansion that completely dictates the final crumb and texture of your baked goods. Think about the macro result of all that microscopic gas expansion. A sad, dense brick completely lacks that carbon dioxide evolution, whereas a beautiful, light, airy loaf has it in spades. The entire difference in volume and structure is entirely due to successfully trapping and expanding CO2 inside those tiny air bubbles. Moving right along to Section 2, the 3 types of leavening: chemical, biological, and physical. Our leavening toolkit breaks down pretty neatly into 3 categories. First, biological agents, so yeast and sourdough starters. These are living organisms that eat sugars and produce CO2 and alcohol over a longer fermentation period. Next, we have physical agents. Think about whipping air into egg whites for a soufflé or relying on rapidly expanding steam to lift delicate layers of puff pastry. But our main focus for this explainer is that 3rd category, chemical agents, which primarily means baking soda and baking powder. All right, Section 3, baking soda versus baking powder, the heavyweight chemical leaveners. Before we break them down, I really want to emphasize that the word chemical is absolutely not a dirty word here. It's just science. I mean, before the invention of these incredibly safe, modern powders, bakers had to rely on harsh compounds like pearl ash, or they were literally forced to spend hours exhausting themselves hand-whipping batters just to get enough air in. These simple chemical reactions completely revolutionized modern baking. This head-to-head showdown reveals the real core difference between the two. Baking soda is pure sodium bicarbonate. It's a powerful solo actor, but because it's a base, it absolutely needs an acidic partner in your recipe, think buttermilk, yogurt, or lemon juice, to actually activate and produce gas. Baking powder, on the other hand, is the complete package. It has sodium bicarbonate, sure, but it also brings its own dry acid to the party, like cream of tartar. Because the acid is already in there, it just needs moisture to trigger the reaction. And here's a fun fact. While you might be picturing some sterile labs synthesizing these ingredients, this natural alkaline powder actually comes straight from the earth. Almost all of it is derived from trona ore, mined deep underground in Wyoming. Oh, and here's a pro tip. When this alkaline baking soda is used in cookie dough, it actually weakens the gluten structure and speeds up browning. That is exactly how you get that perfect golden melt-in-your-mouth cookie texture. Okay, Section 4, the double action secret. This is all about 2-stage leavening. Almost all baking powders you buy at the store today are double acting. They're basically double agents in your batter. They're formulated with 2 completely different acids. The first acid reacts immediately the second you add liquid at room temperature, which gives you that initial burst of bubbles while you're mixing. But the second, slower-acting acid, which is often aluminum-based, doesn't do a thing until it hits the high heat of the oven. This gives you a crucial secondary lift right as the batter starts to set. Think about what happens when baking powder meets room temperature water. There is an instant nucleation of bubbles, the literal second they touch. This first reaction lays down the foundational air pockets that are going to be expanded later in the oven. Now imagine how this builds during that heat activation phase. Right around 50 degrees Celsius, that's 122 degrees Fahrenheit, the heat triggers the second reaction, rapidly releasing way more carbon dioxide. This specific heat activation is exactly why pancakes and waffles rise so beautifully and get super fluffy in the pan before the hot batter even has a chance to fully set. The gas is actively pushing the batter up right before the starches and proteins lock that structure in place. Section 5, the 1-to-3 substitution rule, using baking powder for soda. Remember this number, 3. If you ever run out of baking soda mid-recipe, you must use exactly 3 times the amount of baking powder as a substitute. Why? Well, let's take a look. It's because baking soda is highly potent. We're talking roughly 3 to 4 times stronger than baking powder. A simple 1-to-1 swap just won't generate enough gas, leaving you with a totally flat, lifeless bake. But a quick warning, if you do use this 3 times substitution rule, the original acidic ingredients in your recipe, like that buttermilk we talked about, won't be neutralized by the baking powder, so you might end up with an unexpectedly tangy cake. Finally, Section 6. Troubleshooting your bakes and fixing those common issues. Definitely keep this handy chart in mind the next time something goes wrong in the kitchen. If your bake is dense and heavy, your chemical agents might have just expired in the pantry. Or maybe you didn't whip enough air in during the creaming stage. If your cookies are flat and spreading all over the pan, you probably overmixed the dough and physically popped all those precious bubbles before they even hit the oven. And if you bite into a muffin and get this harsh, soapy, metallic taste, that means you overdid the alkaline baking soda, and there simply wasn't enough acid in the recipe to neutralize it. These golden rules really are your recipe for consistent success. First off, test your powder in hot water. If it doesn't vigorously fizz, just throw it away. Stick to the golden ratio, which is about 1 gram of soda for every 125 grams of flour. Always, always whisk your dry ingredients thoroughly. If you skip that, you'll end up with giant, irregular air pockets. Or worse, biting into a concentrated pocket of raw baking soda. Gross. Finally, watch your cocoa. Natural cocoa is acidic and will react with baking soda, but Dutched cocoa has been alkalized, meaning it won't trigger a reaction at all. The ultimate reward for understanding all this microchemistry is the ability to balance your acids and bases, measure everything precisely, and actually properly aerate your batter. The result is consistently pulling a tray of flawless, perfectly risen baked goods right out of the oven. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. We've really uncovered the hidden science behind the perfect rise today. So now that you're armed with these microscopic scientific superpowers, what are you going to experiment with next? Will you trust the math or risk flat cookies again? Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and happy baking.